So I hope that you're winding your bobbins because I truly think that you will enjoy this very simple top, probably world's easiest and simplest top to sew. I kid you not, I finished it yesterday and I filmed the tutorial yesterday, so today I have the pleasure to guide you through from pattern drafting to sewing and cutting to the final finished garment. To create this top, you will need just a few simple things. Number one, fabric. You will need about 1 to 1.5 yards of your choice. Now, if I were you, I would go for linen blends, cotton blends, or rayons. Those will give you a nice shape like you see over here. My top is made out of medium weight linen, beautiful white linen. Now you can also go for something a little bit flowier like georgette, silk, chiffon. It will give you a really flowy, elegant silhouette. However, if you are a beginner, maybe even a confident beginner, it is still a little bit challenging for you to hem in around fabrics like that because they do fray and they are flimsy to work with. So if I were you, I would stick to the fabrics that are a little bit more stable. Now you will also need some interfacing if you want to go for the same design of a V-neck like I have over here. If you want to go just for a scoop neck, then you don't have to worry about it. You can just use some bias tape. And then you will also need some sewing machine. And that's it. Let's get started. So for the base of the pattern, you will need two simple measurements. One of them will be the length of your actual garment. You take your measuring tape, you place it on the center back neckline, and then you drop it as low as you would like it to be. If you want to make it into a crop top, absolutely go for it. If you want to make it into a dress, why not? Now for myself, I took it a few inches lower than my tailbone. Now from my back neckline to my tailbone, usually it's 21 inches. This time I took 23 inches. Now for the second measurement, we will need to determine the length of your sleeve. Take your measuring tape, place it right here at the very center, and then stretch it as long as you want it, okay? Place your eye on the measurement of how long you want your sleeve to be, and that's what we're gonna work with. All right, so on this side, we have the length of our garment. On this side, we have the length of our sleeve. There will be a third test measurement that we will need to take in order to make sure that everything fits on us without a problem, so definitely stay tuned for that. We will be talking about it once we have drafted our pattern out. I did my little sketch over here, and basically this is my play on a circle top design. And if you're familiar with circle tops, they have been around for a while, and it's a very basic design where you cut a circle, then you cut a hole for a neckline, and bam, you have a top. However, I wanted something a little bit more sophisticated and not so obvious, and also something a little bit more elegant and something a little bit more wearable. So I really wanted to create my version of a circle top. All right, so now that we have those two sides done, let's talk about the neckline. For the neckline, I will take 3.5 inches to the right for half of the width of my neckline. Yes, it's a little narrow, but you can always adjust it. Then from this point over here, I will take 1 inch up. And from this point right over here, I will take 1 inch down. You can leave it straight as it is. However, I do find it that even with simple designs like this, if you do a line that will accommodate your shoulders, it will look a little bit nicer when you put it on, okay? Now, with a dash curved line, you're going to make your back neckline. This is your back neckline, okay? This is your shoulder line. Now, let's talk about the depth of the front neckline. This time, I think I'm gonna go for a V-neck. So let's do 4 inches for now. Again, I can always make it deeper if I would like to. And a V-neck, I don't do it straight like this. But to make it really nice, first you make it straight like that, and then I kind of curve it in a little bit. I feel like that also gives it a nicer shape, and it's not super straight like that. There we go. And again, I will put it on, and now we'll take a look at it, and maybe we'll adjust the neckline. So that part is done. Okay, so now I have turned my pattern sideways. This is the middle, this is our neckline, this is our shoulder. And now we need to curve it in to create that circle top, right? So what we're gonna do is, we're gonna do, with a dash curved line, we're going to create quarter of an oval, okay? So it's not gonna be a circle, but quarter of an oval. And I did mark it for myself prior recording this video, so that way I don't take forever. Okay, so now it's time for our test measurement. I want you to take your measuring tape and determine which one of the following is your biggest measurement, your bust, your waist, or your hips. Then take a full measurement of that part, divide it by 4, so we're gonna work with a quarter, and then you want to make sure that the width of your pattern from here to here before the curve starts is at least 1 inch larger than that quarter measurement that you just took. So for example, largest measurement for me are my hips. Quarter of that is 9.5 inches. So I want to make sure that from here till here is definitely bigger than 9.5 inches plus 1 inch, okay? That way we will ensure that everything is going to fit exactly like we want it. And by the way, my dear sewing friends, if you are a member of this channel, then you do have instructional sheets for this top as a perk for being a member and as a thank you for me for supporting this channel. And if you're not a member, then you can click on the join button below and check it out what it's all about. Alright, so this is how the pattern is going to look like when we're ready to cut it out. So just to make sure I have outlined everything that you need to cut out in black, don't worry about cutting out front neckline, just cut the back neckline like this, and I'll show you what to do with the front neckline later. And you will cut it on a fold. This is both the front and the back piece. So you will cut 2 of these on a fold. One will be with the back neckline and the other one will be with the front neckline. If this does not make sense, it's alright, just watch the whole video. You will get it once you see it in action. Now go ahead and grab your fabric, place it on a fold, place the pattern on top of it, and let's cut. Please note that all patterns that I make in my tutorials and sewing videos, I make without any seam allowances. So you will need to add them as you're cutting. You can see right over here, I'm adding 1/4 of an inch seam allowance all around my top and for the neckline as well. Now, I usually cut my back first and then I do the front. Now, before cutting the front, once you're done with your back piece, go ahead and cut off the back neckline piece on your paper pattern and then cut out your fabric. Now that that is done, I would like for you to take your top and copy the front neckline part, just the top part, and the back neckline top on a separate pattern piece because we're going to draft the facing super quick here. My facing is going to be 1.5 inch wide. Remember to add your seam allowances, 1/4 of an inch or whatever seam allowances you would like. I like my seam allowances to be really narrow. And then we will need to cut 2 of each. Each one of the facings is going to be on a fold. However, we will need 1 piece in fabric and 1 piece in interfacing. Now the first thing for us to do would be to sew the shoulder seams, but before we do that, let's go ahead and serge the edges. Serging the edges of the shoulders will make sure that the fabric does not unravel with time. You can of course also do French seams if you would like to. If you don't have a serger, not a big deal. You can do an overcast stitch on your sewing machine, or even simpler than that, you can do a tightly spaced zigzag stitch. Everything works. You don't have to have any extra tools. Just use what you have. While you're at it, let's go ahead and fuse your interfacing to your facing. So what you want to do is you want to fuse the bumpy side of your interfacing onto the wrong side of your facing. And once that is done, we will also overcast or serge or zigzag the bottom edges of your facings to make sure that everything is nice and neat. Once that is done, go ahead and sew the shoulder seams of your top, right sides placed together with a straight stitch, and then do exactly the same thing on your facing as well. Once all of those seams are done, go ahead and press them open. Next, take your top right side up and take your facing right side down and align them with the shoulder seams, center front, and the back. Go ahead and pin it in place and with a 1/4 inch seam allowance, stitch it. After that is done, go ahead and notch the seam allowance of the facing so that way when you turn it right side out, everything lays nice and flat. And let's understitch it as well. Once that is done, go ahead and press it one more time so that everything is in place. And after everything, if you would like your facing to really be in place, you can also hand stitch it to the side seams. Literally just takes a couple of stitches here and there so that way it really stays on the inside. So once the neckline is done, we're pretty much almost done, seriously. So the next step for us is to finish the hem, and the hem here is literally from the sleeve to the sleeve, right? Everything is just a one big piece. I decided to go with bias tape. Now bias tape is really easy to make. You can make it by hand, you can make it with a little tool like I have, and I am not the one to use any fancy tools in my sewing room. You guys know that better than anybody else, but I do have these bias tape makers and I've had them for years, and if anything is worth an investment, it's definitely these guys. I will leave the link for you to check it out in the info box below, at least for you to see how it works. But as I said, I can definitely vouch for them. I've used them for years and years. Now, to determine how much bias tape do you need, just take a measuring tape and measure the actual length of the whole hem of the top. And it doesn't have to be one continuous piece. You can cut it from multiple pieces and then you can join it, so that way you don't have to waste this much fabric cutting one continuous piece of bias tape. And you will attach the bias tape similarly to attaching the facing to the neckline. Now you will place the top right side together with the bias tape and then stitch it right into that little crease. After that is done, you will press the seam allowance onto the bias tape and then understitch it. And after that is done, you will fold it and then completely stitch it to the actual top. So that way on the top surface, you will only have one stitch when it's all done, but the hem will be super nice and neat and flat. Now here's a little tip. You do want to wind your bobbin before you start stitching the bias tape because it does take a while. It's not a long process, but it will take you, a continuous amount of time by the sewing machine because obviously it is quite a bit of a hem, and I definitely don't want you to be swearing once you run out of your bobbin thread. So definitely wind your bobbin before you get started. Now it's time to do the side seams, so to speak, and the easiest and the most trusted way, in my opinion, is to put the top on yourself, put it in places so that way you feel that, okay, this is a nice amount of ease over here, I can move, this feels good, and then you take a heat erasable pen or a fabric marker and then you mark it where you want that seam to be, and then once you take it off, you have a clear understanding where do you want to do your straight stitch, and really that's all it is, just a straight stitch. Now after that, the next step is optional, but I think that's what makes it so elegant and so unique. So I do not have an actual footage of this because I went a completely different way and my sewing machine was refusing to do buttonholes, and I think I need to take it in for a checkup because it is an older machine. So we'll see if everything is okay or not. So I decided to bias bind these little holes. For you, the easiest way to do that would be to do a buttonhole. So if you have a buttonhole setting, just go ahead and do one buttonhole on this side and one buttonhole on this side. To determine where to do that, it's at your waist level. Okay, and now for the belt. For the belt, the easiest way to determine the length of the belt, you take your measuring tape and you tie it around, you can even make a little knot, and you just see how long you want it to be. Do you want it longer? Do you want it shorter? Whatever is your preference. And then for the width, I would be guided by the width of your buttonhole, okay? So you can of course make it a little bit bigger because especially if you're using linen or any other flowy fabrics, you will be able to get that belt through the buttonhole even if the belt is wider than the buttonhole itself, but definitely don't make it super wide so that way you won't be able to pull it through, okay? And then literally all that it is just a piece of fabric that you cut twice the width of your finished belt, and then you sew it right sides together, leaving a small little opening in the middle so that way you can turn it inside out. Literally, that's all that it is. Well, my dear sewing friends, I hope that you did enjoy this tutorial and I hope that you are feeling inspired to make something beautiful for yourself. Give this video a thumbs up. Thank you so much for watching. And if you're new here, then definitely check out these tutorials that you see on your screen right now because I'm sure you will like them just as much as those one. Thank you so much and I'll see you next time. Bye.